Hello everyone, Harriet here from Millennium Library. We have Master Gardener Jane Zoutman back to talk to you about solitary bees. Before we begin, I'd like to mention we have a number of online services that have gardening resources and information for the beginner to the expert gardener. This includes our RB Digital and Overdrive services for ebooks and e-audiobooks, and gardening e-magazines such as Gardening the Easy Way and Amateur Gardening. Browse and download ebooks and e-magazines using your Winnipeg Public Library card at winnipeg.ca/library. We also have a gardening info guide that we'd like to mention that contains links to a wealth of information and resources. Click on info guides on our website to find this and our other helpful guides.
Hello, I'm Jane Zoutman, and I've got a little presentation for you on solitary bees in the garden. They're kind of interesting. I never even knew they existed until a few years ago. And this is a bit about bees in general. First, you've got to learn about bees first. They are flying insects, I think you know that, related to wasps and ants. They have two large compound eyes. Can you see these great big eyes here? Yeah, those are the compound ones. And they have three small simple eyes. That's the ones here between the antenna. They also have antenna, and they have mouth parts. They will look at mouth parts again, because this is the mandible for chewing on things. And in between here, folded up, is their proboscis for sucking on nectar and other things. Their abdomens have 13 sections. That's sort of consistent with all bees. And the last three are adapted to form a stinger. You're going to find out honeybees are the worst for stinging because a lot of these bees don't even have stingers, or very little ones, and they're quite useless. The smallest of the bees is less than 2 millimeters. Think about that. It's really tiny. And the largest is a giant leafcutter bee. That's this one right here. Look at the size of them. And that's close to the realistic size. This is a honeybee by comparison. Here's your great, huge, we'll talk a little more about it, but look at the size of those mandibles. Whoa. Anyway, there are about 16,000 known species. We got about 807 families. Some species are social, form colonies. These are the ones when they talk about bees, you think about honeybee, of course. The bumblebee also forms colonies and has hives, stingless bee, and the sweat bees. Now, by the way, I'm going to tell you this. I should have probably said it up front. I'm a gardener. That's why I talk about bugs and stuff in your garden. I'm no entomologist. This is, what is a solitary bee? Well, when you think of a honeybee, go the opposite way. There is no division of labor. There's no queen. There's no worker bee. They don't even have a hive. And they don't produce honey at all. No beeswax. And they generally do not sting. They include leafcutter bees. You may have seen some of your plants in your garden with holes in them. That's them. The Carpenter bees. This is one here. He's made himself a nice hole in a piece of wood. Mason bees. They do the same thing, often more in the ground and in gravel. And all sorts more that I couldn't even find. There's no good book for identifying them. Every female is fertile and creates her own nest in the ground, in hollow reeds or twigs or holes in wood. And frequently the nests are near each other. So they don't sort of form a loose colony, but they really just like to nest near each other. They don't interact in any other way. Now, how many solitary bees are there? I haven't a clue. Couldn't find out. Here's a sunflower with one of the solitary bees looking at it. Canada has over 800 species of native bees. And you know what? The honeybee isn't one of them. The honeybee is not native to Canada. The honeybee comes in, it's like I don't know, somebody had the analogy, it was like a cow. It's a domesticated animal. I don't know if you'd call it domesticated, but it's not native here. So we have about 800 species, most of which are solitary bees. Attempts at determining what percentage of crops, and I don't mean just crops, like your apple trees, your canola fields, are pollinated by solitary bees. Well, they did do a study. They had a small crop field with canola in it. Don't ask me how they did it, but my understanding from what I read, they sat there and watched patches of it to see how many solitary bees were in there versus how many honeybees were in there. And even though there was a honeybee hive right beside this particular field, they still think 84% of the pollination was done by solitary bees. So think about it. We rely on bees to pollinate our food, and these solitary bees are the ones that are doing it, not the honeybees. So what do solitary bees eat? Well, as adults, they eat nectar. They go to the plants, suck up the nectar, and they eat it. They don't store it. They don't regurgitate it to make honey. They don't do anything like that. They eat it. They also collect pollen, just like the honeybees do. And this is used to feed their larvae. Now, we'll get more into that, but take a look at this in the background. Not a very good picture, sorry, best I could do. But it's a honeybee with a pile of pollen stuck on them. They have like baskets on the side of the legs where they clean off the pollen and stuff it in there. By the way, bees are all very hairy, so when they go into a plant, the pollen sticks all over them. Well, solitary bees don't have those. So when they get pollen, it just sticks to them. Yeah, well, the result is the solitary bees drop their pollen everywhere they go. So they bop from one plant to another plant to another plant, dropping pollen all over the place. Of course, that's exactly what they're supposed to do, and they pollinate everything very well. So they're actually much more effective at pollinating plants than honeybees are. It is estimated that one red mason bee, and you've seen this, there's a picture coming up of a mason bee, is 120 times more effective at pollinating plants than a honeybee. So just think about it. Honeybee pollinates one plant. This guy pollinates 120 plants all at the same time. So yeah, better off with the solitary bees. Okay, so what plants do solitary bees prefer? Well, here's one of the gardens at Fort White alive. And that's where I started seeing these bees. We have a real case of leafcutter bees in there. Well, they like the native plants. Think about it, they evolved with the native plants. So the solitary bees are more attracted to them. All bees are more attracted to the native plants. So we have asters, liatris, Joe Pye weed, monarda, gaillardia. What have we got in here? Here's what, this is false sunflower. This in the background is some asters right there. This is goldenrod here, the yellow ones. They like all of those. And if you want to know what those plants are, I'll tell you now, go take a look online at Prairie Originals. They have a lovely pamphlet book, and in this she lists all sorts of all her native plants, all her plants are native, by the way, and she has a lovely list in there that'll tell you what you can put in for butterflies, and the same thing works for bees. So what about these annuals that we like to plant? You know, the geraniums, the petunias, I don't know, whatever. I stopped doing it, so I've kind of forgotten about them. Impatiens. You're never going to see a bee, butterfly, or anything on those things. They don't like them. They don't have hardly any nectar or pollen. It's the way they were, you know, they're artificially sort of created. And also you have to worry a little bit about them. You've heard about what's happened to the honeybees, a lot of hives disappearing. They think it's neonicotinoids. I can't say it, I call them neonics. Anyway, neonics are a family of pesticides that's widely used and becoming illegal. Europe has banned them all. We're banning still, we banned most of them. There's still some that are allowed. They coat seeds in them, but the stuff is systemic. It goes through the entire plant. So it's in the pollen and in the nectar. And honestly, this is what's killing off the bees. So so be careful. If you're buying plants that you put in your garden, go to some place where you can rely on them, an organic place, for instance. Or again, or Prairie Originals, Sage Gardens. Those places, ask them, do you know that you have a source for your plants that doesn't use neonicotinoids, because you don't want those on your plants. Anyway, you don't want them killing the bees and the butterflies, because that's what they do. So how do solitary bees have young? Well, many nest in the ground. They look in nooks and crannies, hollow stems in the garden. Most eggs are laid in, they do bamboo, they like that. Most, they lay their eggs in the summer. So here is a piece of hollow wood. I think it's probably bamboo. Hard to say, I don't see any nodes. They go down to the end of it, plop down some pollen, lay an egg. Make a wall using whatever. Often this is what the leafcutter bees use their leaves for. Then they make another plop of pollen and another egg, and then so on and so forth till they fill it up, and then they cover it up. Okay, so, but they can control whether the males or females. So these ones here at the end are probably males. So they'll come out first and they exit. Anyway, the female will keep laying eggs as long as she survives. Usually 20 to 30 eggs in different sort of chambers like this. Now, the eggs are laid in the summer and they hatch into larvae, and then they eat that pollen we were seeing here. They eat this. That's their food. While still in here, they will then go into the pupa stage, which they will, this is where they metamorphose, through the metamorphosis, I don't know, change into bees. They can survive in that state all winter, frozen solid, doesn't matter. So this is how they spend the winter. And then in the spring, they come out when it's warm. I have a nest in my yard, and I've been watching the solitary bees, and it's just starting to come out. It's not been a good spring. Anyway, the males come out first. They wait and mate with the females. Then they promptly die. And then this is their only function in life. And the females live about 8 weeks, during which they will build nest and lay more eggs, and that's their season. Most solitary bees, and most of them actually do. Here's a solitary bee nest in the corner of my garden. And you can see the soil is fairly sandy. This is actually at the lake, and the soil is quite sandy there. They seem to like it. And this is, I don't know what kind it is. I never did see what he was, but it's kind of neat. Now, leafcutter bees. I hope you can see this picture. This one always drives my eyes a little buggy. Leafcutter bees, you'll know them right away if you see them. You see that, like that the leaves have had holes punched in them. They use those for building those nests, and they secrete sort of like saliva type stuff, which they use to glue the stuff together, and they make those nests for their eggs in them. They like different, they're very specific, like goldenrod, fireweed. This is from Fort White. I've seen which ones they like to munch on. They do a good job of it too. Kind of neat. Now, this is a carpenter bee. Obviously, he loves to live in wood. This is a beam from a cottage. It was sliced in half. Can you see that there's just sort of two sides of the same thing? This one here, you can see where they came in, and they probably built their first nest here, then used sawdust to glue a chamber and closed, and then another one, and then sawdust some more, and then saw another one. These got chewed up, and it's already been emptied, and there's just the exit. They'll cover the exit up. Here's another one. This is two halves of the same thing. I didn't get that far with this one. Obviously, he chewed out a much bigger hole than he ended up using, or she. I keep saying he, but I should say she ended up using. Now, here are the solitary bees threatened. Well, of course they are, unfortunately, like everything else. I told you I'd show you a blue mason bee. This is the one that's very effective at pollinating. Look at how hairy he is. And that's one of the reasons they're very good at pollinating. They pick up the pollen everywhere they go, and they just drop it everywhere they go. A lot of it they clean up when they're done, and they use to feed the young. She looks like a fly. Can you see that? I've seen them in my backyard. Looks just like a fly. And be careful. Look at what you're looking at. Make sure if you're going to swat it, make sure it's a fly. And are they threatened? Yeah. Like honeybees and bumblebees, their numbers are declining as far as they can tell. People know so little about them, so they don't know, how to count them. So what are the threats? Well, chemicals, of course, the neonics, and habitat loss. Think about it. Great, huge field of canola. They're happy to pollinate a field of canola. But where do they live? Doesn't work too good. They can't really live in the field very well itself, so they try to live on the fringes. If there's a bit of bush and some natural stuff on the fringes of the field, they will live there. So pesticides and herbicides, always kill a whole lot more than they aim. So we mentioned neonicotinoids already, coating seeds, and it's used very commonly in the farms here. Again, not a good thing. But they have a really bad effect on the bees. Habitat loss, fragmentation. They're all over the place. They have a little area they can live in one place, and they have another little area they can live. They don't have good open areas where they can live. So the huge fields of crops really do make it hard for them, but they do try. So what can we do? Well, you can make yourself a solitary bee nest. This is the one that's on my garage. I'll show you a picture of it in a bit. What you want to see it right now? Okay, there it is. Yeah, that's what it looked like new. It's not new anymore. Look at it. It's grubby and kind of goopy. This was 2 days ago I took this picture. Here is, most of them are still full. Few of them, some of the bees look like they might have come out. It's just been too cold. I find usually by this time in May, a normal spring, not been normal, they're empty. And they've all started flying around and doing their thing. So I'm going to keep watching them and see what crawls out. But you can see the size of the holes. Look at how different the size. Even these little holes. Yeah, there's some very tiny solitary bees. And some of them have leaves. This one here has a leaf cut over. So I must have a leafcutter bee. Can't say as I've noticed it, but I probably do. So if you want to make yourself something like this, you can. I got that at Lee Valley. This is one we made, and it's easy to do. I've taken it apart last year because I wanted to clean it and then get around to it. It's just pieces of wood with holes drilled in the side, not all the way through. Try to keep the end solid. put in a little box. They're loose, they slide around a little bit, but it seems to work reasonably well. And with a bit of, I had a piece left over from something or other of this metal over top of it, wasps will go in there and try to eat them. So try to protect them. I've got this picture online, but this looks so fascinating. This is a solitary bee hotel. It's huge. Look, there's your bamboo, cut up into lengths and backed into there. They probably just glue it all down. The hot glue gun would do the job nicely, I think. These are pine cones, and there's more pine cones in here. And some of these are just pieces of wood, straw, pieces of something or other. I'm not sure what that would be, with holes of different sizes drilled into it. This is just, that plant material folded up. This is too, leaves, I think that is. Anyway, they love that. They're very happy to do that. But think about this. How could you translate this into your own backyard? Well, building something this massive, which is very neat and quite the job, what else could you do? Well, oh, there's mine again. But I should go back. One thing I didn't mention with this fellow, as you can see, he's gotten pretty grubby. He's been there for 2 years now. I have a brand new one. That was the first picture you saw that I picked up at Lee Valley. And I'm going to take one is empty. I'm going to put the new one beside him, and hopefully when he's and then take this one down and throw it out. They get mites. There's mildew gets in there, all sorts of bacteria. So it's good to change and clean them every so once in a while. I try to do it every 2 years. Okay. Now, if you look in the ground, if you're going to make some, make sure your holes are a variety of sizes. Make them as smooth. Use a drill, go up and down a few times. Don't use plastic straws. People say that, don't. The plastic straws encourage mold. The back of the tunnel should be solid, so push it right up against something. If you're going to use pieces of cut bamboo, use a bit of glue, use your glue gun and stick it right onto something solid and behind. The tube should be cleanable or throwable. I throw them out. It's just the easiest way. And I replace them usually in May or June. That's when you find that's empty again. There's nothing in there. But you can also use pine cones, bunches of twigs, straw. A wire cover keeps out the wasps, and put it in a sunny spot. And this is the trick, face east. I know that sounds weird, but if you face it east, it works. Tried other directions, nothing works, face east. I don't know why. And I'm also now why I say this, put it up the side of a high rise. I was reading an article that they have the highest roof garden in New York City. And that the bees that they have there fly all the way to the High Line. Now, if you've read anything about Pete Outdorf, he has landscaped the High Line, which used to be an old train track, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And the point being that the bees will fly the 10 miles or 10 kilometers, whatever it is, to there and get their stuff. And they stay up there. But bees actually don't fly high. So if you put the stuff up, the solitary beehive or house up too high, they won't come. Anyway, here's a colony, or sort of colony, on the ground. I showed you that one. Well, this is later in the summer when a whole bunch more moved in. As you can see, look at the holes they're all making. These, they don't live together, but they do like to live in the neighborhood of each other. This is kind of funny. I found this picture online. These are called chocolate bees. Solitary. Look at them. They're mating on top of this person's finger. Ooh, weird. Anyway. Now here's bamboo. Works really well. And you can use this. Again, you have to throw it out after a couple of years and make new ones. Here's your leaf covering one of the holes. This is just whatever, they have. I don't know, and they use their saliva to sort of glue it all together to cover up their holes. And here's one busily going in there making a new nest. You can help these fellows out. So what else can you do? Well, don't be so flippin' neat in your garden. Leave some stuff around. We're bad. We clean up everything absolutely perfectly, and I was certainly guilty of that too. But I've learned. I leave now some open areas. It helps that I have 2 dogs who kind of don't do my backyard a whole lot of favors. So in the back corners of my backyard, I leave bits of leaves, some sticks, a little pile of wood, things. I just leave it there. And honestly, I have all sorts of bugs living in there, and that's fine with me. So leave some leaf litter around. And grow some of your native plants in your gardens. Swamp milkweed, loved by all in the bug world, and pieweed, another one. That one's really tall. Some gardens can't handle that. But look at what the native plants are. Again, look at the Prairie Originals. So she has a big list for bugs. Go and look and see what would work in your garden. Do you know that they like zinnias? That's one thing I found out. That bees and the butterflies like zinnias. Don't ask me why. Don't know. I grow zinnias every year. Don't be so fastidious about cleaning up. For instance, in the spring, wait until everything's warmed up and dried up and the creatures that are living in your leaves and stuff, including the butterflies, have had a chance to leave. I only just cleaned my stuff up a little while ago. How about this guy? He's called an orange-tailed mining bee. I'm not sure. I'm trying to look where the orange comes in. It looks more yellow to me. But anyway, kind of an interesting looking bee. That's my presentation. So think about solitary bees, look in your garden, watch the bees. You'll see the itty bitty teeny ones, and you'll see all sorts of weird things that look like flies and aren't flies at all. Watch for holes. Leave some open areas where they can do this. So it was a really good article in the Winter Gardener, 2019, 2010. Take a look at that. These are all things you can find on solitary bees, just on the internet. The Nature Conservancy had a nice article on there, and Cottage Life actually had a very nice little article on solitary bees. So if you're interested and would like to know more about them, this is what you do. Anyway, this is Jane, the gardener, talking about bees. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.
Thank you again, Jane. There is so much to learn about bees, but you've provided a super introduction. Thank you as well to everyone who has watched this presentation.